Let's talk about self-esteem. And self-esteem, when we look at ourselves in the mirror, who do we see? And when we see that person, what do we feel? Based on the reaction that we feel as we look at ourselves, I think that generally has to do with self-esteem. If you like the person you see, then one might say you have good self-esteem. If you don't like who you see, you might have low self-esteem. So, how do we go from not liking ourselves to having great self-esteem? And I think two dimensions of this are worth talking about. Number one, are we good people? Do we do good things? And this stands in contrast with, are we doing bad things? But, like I mentioned in a lot of my videos, just because you don't do bad things, it doesn't really make you a good person. It just makes you neutral. Just because you do a bad thing doesn't mean you are automatically this one bad person who has no redeeming qualities at all. Just because you don't do good things, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means you're not doing optional work that's required to be a good person. But at the same time, just because you do a good thing, it doesn't mean you are a saint. So the accounting for good actions and bad actions need to be done separately. But what's more important is the human mind has a tendency to rationalize from the perspective of me. So it becomes very likely that when we do something bad, from our perspective, it's like, but I was, forced to do that. Or, that was the best I could do at the time. So it's important to notice these rationalizations and make sure that we are doing good by ourselves all the time. So what do I mean by good and bad? Well, good is generally all the things that are optional of another person. Do I have to help that person? Not really. They're on their own, and they have all it takes to get up on their feet. But if they're having a hard time, can I give them a helping hand? Yeah. So what's a bad thing? The Buddhist five, restrictions: physically harming another, verbally harming another, and stealing from another, sexually assaulting one another, and being intoxicated to the degree where you're so intoxicated you forget about the previous four. And the only note I would give is verbally attacking someone. Just because I say something without the intention to harm someone, someone else might be triggered. That's not what I mean by bad, harming another person verbally. Harming another person verbally is like looking at the other person and say, fuck you. So that is with the intention, right? So that's verbal. And as long as you're not doing that, you're not a bad person. But if you're going above and beyond, you're a good person. But there's a lot of dimensions. So in general, am I being good or am I being bad? Without rationalizing, getting an objective view of the self and striving towards goodness more gives you pretty good self-esteem. The other dimension is when we look at ourselves, right? Do we see a reliable person? If you have a friend and they never show up on time and they are very likely to flake on the, your meetings and, things like that, then are you likely to consider this person when you have a really important ask? Are you likely to count on this person when you have something important coming up in your life? So, if another person is subject to those kind of judgments, so are you. When you repeatedly flake upon yourself, right? You always give up, you always change your mind to whatever is convenient. Of course, you're gonna have bad self esteem because you don't count on yourself to be reliable. So, here's the common pitfall: we try to amend for it by doing one grand thing. But how are you gonna run when you can't even walk? To build up that kind of reliability for ourselves, it's important to do and keep small commitments to your day over a sustained period of time. This gives you a bit more ease. And guess what? A 5-star Yelp review with 2 reviews versus 4.2 stars with 5,000 reviews. it's more reliable to go with the 4.2, although it's not a 5.0, right? This is the power of consistency. This is the power of doing something big, but in terms of the time passed. We like to glamorize these big achievements over a momentous impact. But actually, when we sit down and try to do our work, we find that it is much, much, much harder to do something long term. That's why in sports, you have a lot of athletes who have great seasons in isolation, but there are very few athletes who have great careers. So, if you don't have a career, if you don't have anything, well, one thing you could do is move around and regret, why didn't I do these things in the past? But the past is already gone. So, what can you do instead? You start today at the beginning of your new career and work on small commitments that you can keep, and then build up to more challenging ones if you don't. But even if you don't, just the consistency itself will give you a lot of a boost in your self-esteem. And if you're looking for those particular challenges, daily tasks that you are wanting to do every day, check out my Buddhist print practices guide available for your download. Wow, I can't speak. In the descriptions below.